Were you the scapegoat child in a narcissistic family? Today, we're going to delve into two harmful dynamics that can come from growing up within a narcissistic family. The first one being the scapegoat, and the second is the golden child. Now, you may be unfamiliar with these terms. Don't worry, they will all make sense. Hi, I'm Michele Paradise, and thanks for joining me today for this video. If you've ever felt like the scapegoat, like you can do nothing right, it feels like you're carrying the weight of the family's problems, or conversely, that you are put on a pedestal and can do no wrong, this is definitely the right place for you today. And I want you to think about some of this as I'm talking to you. It might not just apply to you, it might apply to a brother, sister, other family member, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, mother, father. It's just really good to be aware of this particular dynamic, or these dynamics in a narcissistic relationship, because you actually might be able to help these people open their eyes, create some more awareness around what they have been living, and ultimately they can get some help. But first, let's unpack what it means to grow up in a narcissistic family. Narcissistic families will have one or both parents exhibiting narcissistic traits. You may be familiar with them by now, but just to remind you, that will be lack of empathy, need for attention, a lot of need for a lot of attention, few to no boundaries, an inflated ego, entitlement, grandiosity, charisma. Now, there's nothing wrong with charisma. There's nothing wrong with any of these things. It's just when you put them all together in one person, you may be dealing with a narcissistic parent in this case. And sometimes, I'm sorry to say, two. What tends to happen in narcissistic families is that the narcissistic parent will manipulate situations as a means to serve their own egos. Family members are often cast into specific roles that serve the narrative of the narcissistic parent and not the child. I always refer to, imagine a circle, and in the middle there's a dot, and the dot represents the narcissist. The circle represents their supply, and we are all just spokes on the circle. And they use us until they devalue us and discard us, and then they move on to the next one. However, in a family, you really don't get that choice very often, because you are, in some cases, their whipping boy or girl. They put all the blame on you, and it's very convenient. It's very convenient for them to do that. So what would a healthy family dynamic look like? In a healthy family, and these are generalizations, your three needs are met: to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted just the way you are. Now, using an example, a scenario, a metaphor, let's say the child falls down and hurts itself. Okay, now the parent will come to the child in a healthy relationship and say, are you okay? They might come to their level. How are you feeling? If the child is pre-verbal or just learning language, the child might not have words. So the parent would help the child, help them to connect emotionally to themselves, so that ultimately they can individuate and separate from the parent, stand on their own 2 feet, and have a healthy life. The other side of that would look like a narcissistic parent with a child that falls and hurts itself. It might sort of look at the child and say, "You're fine, stop crying. You're always a crybaby. You over-dramatize things. It's your fault anyway, because you fell over that thing and it was so clear and so obvious. Why did you do that?" Now, I'm not saying that people that don't run to their child and minister to them, and be very dramatic and loving and all of that are narcissists. I'm just saying this is part of what it can look like. So that parent would continually ignore that child, not meet that child's needs, treat that child as it should be an adult almost. It shouldn't cry like a baby, and it should be much more resilient than it is. So I hope you can see in that very simple explanation, metaphor, what it can look like. Very basically, in a healthy family, the child's needs are met emotionally, physically, mentally, they're met. In a narcissistic family, only the parents' needs are met. So if the child falls, it may be a great inconvenience to them. They may be watching a TV show or having a conversation on the phone or something, and they don't want to be interrupted. So it's all about them. They are in the middle of that circle, and they need us when it's convenient for us and not when it's convenient. Sorry, when it's convenient for them and not when it's convenient for us. So as I've mentioned, two common roles are the scapegoat and the golden child. They're not the only roles, but I really want to focus on these. And these develop in narcissistic families very frequently, and they serve the narcissist and not the children. So the general definition of a scapegoat is a person who is blamed for just about everything in the family, all the wrongdoings, the mistakes of themselves and others, their siblings. They are blamed not because they actually did something wrong, but because it is convenient for the narcissist to do that. Because remember, we're there to serve them. They're not there to serve us. This child will feel like they can do nothing right, that they carry the burden of everything in the family. They may be blamed for their siblings' misbehaviors, shortcomings, or even the financial strain on the family. Just a quick little view of what that might look like. Let's say that the scapegoat child is very smart and wants to go to university, and the family doesn't have a lot of money, so they might have to take out a loan or something. And they don't want to because it puts a financial strain on the family. It's not about the child, it's about the family, and particularly that one adult. They may hear phrases, the scapegoat child may hear phrases like, why can't you be more like your sister? Your sister's never a problem. She's always so amenable and nice and flexible. But you always cause problems. Now, that doesn't mean it's true. That is the narrative of the narcissistic parent. They'll say things that look at what you've done, look at the problems you've caused, even if they haven't. They will get blamed, as I said earlier, for things that their siblings have done. And a lot of scapegoat children learn to keep their mouth shut because they're walking on eggshells anyway, and they don't want to cause any more problems and don't want any more attention or spotlights on them. So they'll take the rap for their brother and sister. The really harmful part about this all is that the scapegoat child will feel that no matter what they do, no matter how much effort they put into anything, they will always be overshadowed by criticism. This constant blame game isolates the scapegoat child and can impact their self-esteem. They don't grow. They don't grow emotionally. And that inhibits their ability to form healthy relationships outside of the family in the future with potential partners. The scapegoat child will feel that they are walking on eggshells, as I said earlier, trying to keep the peace, but ultimately that they are the problem. They don't even understand why they're the problem. So this can translate into some personality adaptations and archetypes, which I'll tell you a couple just to give you some clarification. So one may be people-pleasing. As I've said before, I'm a recovering people-pleaser, so people-pleasing can be, a way of adapting to get your needs met outside of the family. So you're very nice to everyone. You abandon yourself all the time in relationships. You give. Your emotional bank account is low, even empty. But at least nurtures you a little bit. You get a bit seen, you get a bit heard, you get a bit validated, and you'll take it because it's better than nothing. You might be hyper independent. Again, this is something I experienced. So you don't need anybody, you don't trust anybody, you don't let anybody do anything for you, don't ask for help, because this wasn't part of your upbringing. You don't have that. You don't know what you don't know, as I say. You don't know what it's like to be looked after, to be helped, to be considered in the equation. You might become hypervigilant. The world feels very unsafe, so you're always looking to make sure that you feel safe, because remember, safety is the most important part of our lives. Without safety, love doesn't grow, happiness doesn't grow, we don't grow. Or you may be the life of the party, where you may be very depressed, upset, whatever, but you get yourself together, you go to the party, you tell jokes, you make people laugh, you are charming, and everybody wants to be around you. Everybody wants to talk to you, but you go home by yourself and maybe cry yourself to sleep because you are very lonely. Even in the midst of others, you are very lonely. So I want you to take a moment and pause, think about this. Do any of these resonate with you? Or people pleaser, hypervigilant, hyper independent, life of the party, perhaps? So we've spoken about the child that can do no right, the scapegoat. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the child that can do no wrong, the golden child. This child is often held up as the beacon of the family and the standard to which the scapegoat is constantly compared. And this golden child faces a lot of pressure. It's not a great place to be either. There's the pressure of maintaining the status of being the golden child. Their successes are often magnified while their failures are overlooked and probably blamed on the scapegoat child anyway. They have the pressure of maintaining perfection and that the love of their parents is conditional on their continued success. They maybe feel trapped in a cycle of pleasing their parents, and their worth becomes attached to the things they are able to achieve. And that can really feel very performative to the child. So this limits the true emotional freedom and self-exploration of the golden child. And the golden child becomes, as I said, performative in their parent or parents' dynamic. It is very transactional relationship. And I refer to the golden child as holding the poison chalice. It looks beautiful from the outside, but what you drink is poisonous. Or they're a bird in a golden cage. The cage is golden, but it's still a cage and they're still trapped. So what's really going on here is that when we grow up, by the age of 7, we're really fairly developed our personality. And the first 3 years of our lives are very critical. And that's when we begin to individuate, separate from mother. And literally, metaphorically, we begin to, walk and talk and begin to be able to do some things for ourselves. And the ultimate goal for the mother and the child, and I'm using the term mother here, but that could be father as well, is to let the child go, to give the child great foundation, to see the child, hear the child, and love the child and accept the child, so it feels safe to leave, stand on its own 2 feet, and develop its own personality. In this equation, that really is difficult for both of these children to do. And this creates a lot of rivalry and competition between the 2 types of children. And this really feeds into the narcissist ego. They love it. It breeds jealousy, competition, resentment for each other. And they sit back and watch the show because they are controlling both of these children in different ways to give them what they need. Remember, we are the supply on their supply wheel. Now, I'll give you an example of what this can look like. Let's say that the golden child is, I'm going to use a woman in this case, very beautiful. And her looks, and I don't condone this, but what I'm saying is the beliefs and values of that family is we want our children to marry well and be rich and have big houses and vacations and holidays and cars and all of that. So if that's their belief and value, this beautiful child, golden child, grows up and attracts a very wealthy, handsome man in her life. And she has this very charmed life, doesn't have to work, great vacations, children go to private schools. And on the other side of that, the scapegoat child might be struggling, might be very smart, not saying that the other one isn't, but be very smart, has paid for their own education, got no help from the family, didn't get validated in any way from the family. And this is great for the egoistic, narcissistic parent because the golden child plays into all their beliefs and values. And they can then boast. They have bragging rights for their friends and family, pictures of the vacations they've gone on with them, being at their beautiful house, at barbecues and parties, and talking about their son-in-law's new promotion and things like that. So this can really set up a division between the 2 children. And of course, in this scenario, in this equation, you can see what's going to happen, that the scapegoat child is going to be very sidelined, almost feel like an outcast. So we've talked about the 3 fundamental needs: to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted. And children who are starved of this unconditional love and genuine self-worth find it challenging as adults to value themselves, to form long-lasting, healthy relationships. And as I always say, the first step to healing is awareness of the impact your childhood had on your personality, your sense of safety, and your template for relationships. So, as I've done before, I like to share a little bit about my life, not because I'm boasting about my life or anything, but it's safer for me. It means that my clients don't recognize themselves in my stories. And also, It's very much a part of the way I work, in that I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of trainings and lots of learnings, but I've also lived a lot of what I talk about. And I think that brings a very special little sizzle to what I'm talking about in this video. So I was raised in a family with a narcissistic father, not a narcissistic mother. I have an older brother, and my brother was the golden child. I was scapegoat child. That's the way it worked out. He could do no wrong. He had 4 years of his life without me, just him and my mother, and it's very easy to become the golden child in that she doted on him. Disclaimer here, I blame no one for any of this. My parents came into my life and his life with their own traumas, and they did the best they could with the knowledge and information that they had at the time. They're both deceased, so this relationship has changed a bit. But anyway, being a scapegoat child, that was a lot of bullying from my brother, because he's also narcissistic, which is not uncommon. We now know that the child models the same-sex parent first, and sometimes they just fall into that pattern of modeling their behavior. I don't know if that's the case with my brother, but that's my interpretation of it. And also, my father's life, on the face of it, looked much more exciting and interesting than my mother's did. So my brother chose that, because we're not born this way. These are epigenetic. They're not genetic. So my brother being a narcissist, great moment to share this with you, does not mean that it's genetic and that he inherited it from my father. More precisely, it's epigenetic, it's lifestyle, how we grew up, the container we grew up in, the environment, and he modeled the behavior and copied the behavior because it served him. It served my father and it served my brother. So there was a lot of bullying towards me. I was the interloper in his life. I took the attention away. I had a very difficult birth, so my mother and I were both, needing to recover from that. And I'm not sure if my mother ever recovered from it, because in those days they didn't have the kind of the ability to notice these things, postnatal depression and all of that. So I was a real thorn in my brother's side, and I can see why he might have felt the way he did about me. However, I could do nothing right. He made loads of mistakes, substance abuse and all kinds of things, and they kind of overlooked them. Whereas with me, I lovingly say, jokingly say, I sang and danced my way through childhood, was in plays and musicals and anything I could do to get out of the house and, be in another space. And they really weren't that interested. I think they came to one of my performances, and my father left at intermission because he couldn't sit that long without having a cigarette. So he never came back and consequently missed my performance, which may have been a good thing for him. I don't know. But I'm just using this as an example of what it can look like. Now, I've talked about this as the scapegoat, doesn't have a great life. Definitely not a great life growing up. Robs you of your self-esteem. I was also an HSP, highly sensitive person, so I would cry, take things very personally, and I was, told off for that. You're a crybaby, you're overly emotional, you need to grow some backbone and all of that. However, I would choose to be, not that it's a choice, I would choose to be the scapegoat child any day over the golden child, because you do get a chance to get out. The golden child doesn't. The golden child is almost, there's this golden cord between the child and the parent, and in this case, my mother, till the day that she died. In fact, my brother hardly moved anywhere near away from home, maybe 50 miles. And of course, I, as soon as I could, got on an airplane and got as far away as I possibly could. So for me, that experience, I'd rather have been a scapegoat child. So what about healing? It is possible. Trust me, it is possible. It does involve things like getting help, therapy, counseling. Now, I know not everybody can afford it, which is why I do these videos, to help you navigate your life a bit better, to raise some awareness, because as we know, awareness is everything. Boundary setting is huge. I grew up in what is called an enmeshed family, where there were no boundaries. It was my father's way or the highway. I didn't even know what a boundary was. I thought it was a fence that divided property. I didn't realize that that was something inside of you, that you could say no, or you could choose something else. Boundary setting is huge in a narcissistic family. Seeking support, not just from a therapist or counselor, but from friends. I like to talk about finding your tribe, finding people that are like-minded, that co-regulate you, not dysregulate you. You want people that really ground you and center you. Spend time around them. Spend time around, for example, other HSPs if you're an HSP. Spend time around people that have the same interest issue, that aren't toxic. Blood is not thicker than water. I really want you to hear this. It is okay to let your family go. No one has the right to emotionally, physically, mentally abuse you. No one, no matter who they are. So if you need it, you have my permission to let go of family members that have treated you badly as a child. And most importantly is self-compassion. Now, this is compassion for self and ultimately, if you can, compassion for others. I don't mean forgiveness. This gets confused sometimes, but compassion and understanding for the people that harmed you, to see their journey. You're not forgiving them, but that can set you free because you begin to understand that it wasn't your fault. It's not about blame, but it wasn't your fault. It was something that they did as a response to their own trauma. So if you're wanting to understand the impact of your childhood better, be sure to check my self-healing course where I provide video content. There's a link below. There are worksheets, many videos and activities to really help you understand and build awareness around your childhood and learn ways to set boundaries, super important, and change the limiting beliefs you have about yourself. Remember, you have the power to rewrite your own script. Please know that there is a path forward to healing. Thank you very much for following me today. Please remember to hit the subscribe button to see my other videos.